Good day. It's March 5th, 2015, and this is a combustion motor and fan assembly out of a Austroflamm Integra pellet stove. Now this unit was purchased back in 1994, so it makes it about just short of 21 years old. And last week the motor bearings started making some noise, so it was time to replace it or try to repair it. After some research on Dr. Google and YouTube, I could find nothing as far as instructions on how to repair this. Replacement cost, it starts at $325. Locally, it's $351, tax included. So at that price, I thought it'd be worthwhile to see if I could figure out how to take this apart and change out the bearings. And for what it's worth, there are the old bearings. And so far, I have a total investment of about $4. So for that kind of return on investment, I think it was well worth it. So I'll go through the process of how I took this motor apart, the problems I ran into, some of the changes I've made, and hopefully it will help you decide whether you want to venture into trying to repair one of these yourself or just ante up and pay the $300 and some odd for a new unit. Okay, now the impeller, there's a nut on the front here, and I can't tell you the size because over the 20 some odd years this is eroded and it's down to about a 9 millimeter. The one noteworthy item is that this is a left-handed threaded nut. So when you want to loosen it, you turn it clockwise. So I'll take this off. So there's a nut. The impeller comes off. There is a copper washer underneath here. That comes off. And then this plate needs to come off. Now, on the original from the factory, they had just sheet metal screws that ran down through here into this plate. I got one out. The other two said, no thank you, I'm not going to play. So I wound up cutting the heads off. And I really don't like just using sheet metal screws, so what I did was I drilled and tapped this plate for an 832 screw, and I used a machine screw going through, threaded into this, and then I lock it with a lock washer and a jam nut. So these shouldn't be that tight. I left this loose so I could show how to take this apart. I've had this apart a couple times now just to make sure I knew what I was doing and not give you bad information. Now you don't have to drill and tap the plate. I just like doing that. Just a little more secure. And so now I'll take these 3 screws out. And it may be beneficial to put like witness marks on various plates so you know how to orient these things going back together. Okay, so now I'm going to remove these 3 screws. And again, before they were just sheet metal screws, self-tapping sheet metal screws. And as far as the motor is concerned, these are extremely high quality motors. And to throw them away simply because the bearings have gotten tired, to me, it's just not right. We're such a wasteful society. It just makes me feel bad when I see they don't offer repair kits. Okay, so this plate is off. Now underneath here, there's a hard insulator, and then there's another plate that goes underneath. So I'll set those off to the side. Now here's where I ran into trouble when I was trying to disassemble this thing initially. It took me a little bit to figure out what this does. You can see it just spins, and as far as I can tell, the purpose of this plate right here is to transfer heat that's coming back from the combustor. It comes down the shaft, and instead of letting it get into the motor, it comes to this aluminum plate, radiates out, and as it spins, it acts like a little fan, if you will, and helps dissipate the heat. If that wasn't there, the heat would get back into the bearings and destroy it really fast. And I'll show you this once I get it off. But from the factory, this little impeller here, they put a really small set screw, an Allen set screw, in the bottom here on the shaft, and it was seized up tight. I mean, there was no way I could get it out, so I had to wind up drilling it out, and I basically destroyed this impeller right here before I got it off. And again, here's the original factory hole, and what I had to do was I drilled and tapped on this side here for another set screw. So that was the major holdup as far as disassembling this motor. That was a real pain. Okay, now down inside here there is a external snap ring, and you'll have to get a pair of snap ring pliers. And what I'm going to do is just stop this, and it'll take me a little bit just to finesse, and I don't know if I can get down here so you can see. There's the snap ring. So I'll get that out and I'll be back. Okay, I have the snap ring off, and when you're using your snap ring pliers, don't spread this too much, or it'll take a set and then it won't want to clip onto the shaft when you go to reassemble it. And it's worth noting that there's a right way and a wrong way for these snap rings to go on. And if you look at the snap ring, there'll be a sharp edge and then what they call a die drop, a slightly rounded edge on the other side. And you may need a magnifying glass to see that. But the sharp edge is what you want facing up, so it grabs and holds on that groove in the shaft. If you put the rounded side up, not always, but there's a chance that it can work its way up off the shaft. In any case, the sharp side of the snap ring is up during assembly. Now, inside here there are a couple of spring washers, and I'll try to get those out of here. Okay, now these are conical shaped spring washers, and when they go back together like so. So when you go to put that snap ring back in there, they compress, and it helps keep the rotor in the correct position. So I don't know if they've changed the design over the years, but that's what I had to work with. There's two spring washers. Initially, I did take this plate off, but you really don't need to. So in any case, at this point, you just take and pull it apart. And that's all there is to it. Now, I'm not going to take these bearings out because they're new and I don't want to mess with them. But there's the front bearing and there's the back bearing. And what I like to do is I'll take a piece of emery cloth and just polish the inside of that so it's a nice slip fit. I mean, it takes a little bit to pop them in there, but unless you have an arbor press with the right mandrels, if you get in here and mess up these shields, you're all done. And so I'm going to leave those in there and leave well enough alone. But again, these are extremely high quality motors, and there's absolutely no reason to throw them away. Not for the cost of bearings. By the way, the bearings are GMN 608. These bearings, the original bearings, I was looking on eBay, they're about $12 a piece. So it's not too bad. I mean, $24 instead of $351. That's not too bad. So, okay, so we've changed out the bearings, and now we go put this back together again. And I just wipe things down, and I usually try to polish the shaft a little bit. Again, after 20 years, there's going to be some accumulation of dirt and grit and stuff like that. So we put it back together, and of course my front bearing popped out. Okay, so this socket is 5/8, and it's nice to just push that bearing right to the base. Okay, so we're going back together now. There's our two conical shaped washers. They have to be situated like that. And they go back in here like that. And the snap ring, and again, as you recall, the sharp side is up. Okay, the socket I'm using is a deep well, and it's a 3/8 socket. So I put it on top of there, and I just push down until I hear that snap ring click. Hopefully you heard that. I just wanted to check to make sure that snap ring was back in there properly. And hopefully you can see, get some light down there. There's the snap ring, and those spring washers are compressed, and it looks good. And I give this a little spin, and you can see those washers spin with the shaft. Now again, this was the hardest part of the whole job, was getting this off. And so putting it back on there, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put just a little Loctite on that homemade set screw. And there's no torque on it. There's really no force at all on this. So, and that goes back down like that. Like I said, the original was a Allen set screw. I didn't have one, so I just made my own. And you don't have to get on it that much because, like I said, there's no force on this at all. So that's back installed. Now there's, again, this plate goes here. This is just an insulator. This is old and petrified. Treat that very gingerly. And then here's your outer plate. Once I get these machine screws installed, I'll be back. Okay, again, these nuts and lock washers that I put on here are just to act as a jamming against the threads of this. So far, so good. Almost there. Last but not least, there's that copper washer. Goes on the shaft. And this is keyed. There's a little flat there. That goes back on. And again, this is a left-handed nut. And I did check my local hardware store. They don't have anything. And it's probably metric to boot. So. Again, left hand to tighten. And there you go. You just saved yourself $351. All right. 340 some odd dollars because I had to spend $4 for the bearings. So there you go. The tear down, bearing replacement, and reassembly of an Austroflamm Integra pellet stove combustor fan motor assembly. Take care and have a nice day.